The Justice Department has now confirmed former CIA Director John Brennan, former FBI Director James Comey, both under criminal investigation. And it will center around their roles in the Trump-Russia election meddling investigation, which we know was a hoax. Prosecutors accuse them of making false statements to Congress over what has become known as Russiagate. Years of investigating, ending with the whimper of the Mueller report. President Trump weighing in.
Do you want to see these two guys behind bars?
I think they're very dishonest people. I think they're crooked as hell. And maybe they have to pay a price for that. I believe they are truly bad people and dishonest people. So whatever happens, happens.
Well, Brennan says he's just baffled.
I know nothing about this reported investigation or referral to the DOJ other than what I've read in these press reports, these leaks, which are not really supposed to happen if there is an investigation going on. Again, I am clueless about what it is exactly that they may be investigating me for.
Meanwhile, the New York Times reports the Secret Service began monitoring James Comey's movements after his infamous 8647 seashell post. Remember that? In many circles, 86 means to knock somebody off, especially gangster circles. 47, a possible reference to President Trump, the 47th president of the United States. The U.S. Secret Service released a statement, quote, as it relates to President Trump, the threat climate has never been higher. The Secret Service will vigorously investigate any individual, regardless of position or status, that may pose or be perceived as a threat to any of our protectees, end quote. Senator John Kennedy, Republican of the great state of Louisiana, serves on the Judiciary and Budget Committees. Let's take it in reverse order in just a second, because I want to start with where we are on protecting the president, and just get your thoughts to what I just talked about with the Secret Service.
What do you mean by protecting the president, Aaron?
It says the threat climate against him has never been higher than what it is now.
I think that's true. I think that's absolutely true. We have a number of people in America. They're crazy. I mean, they take politics so seriously that if you disagree with them, you're not just wrong. You're in error. You're a bad person. And presidents are very visible. I know they have good protection, but they've got to be protected every moment. I really regret that we live in a climate like we live in. But I can tell you two people who contributed to that climate. You've already mentioned their names, James Comey and Mr. Brennan.
Well, look, when we talk about that seashell on the seashore messaging, 8647, and now open criminal investigations to the two men we're talking about now, Comey and Brennan, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I know Mr. Comey and I know Mr. Brennan. Neither one of them, in my opinion, should attempt more than 6 of the 10 commandments. They're not very nice people. They're not ethical people. I know people who have worked with them closely. And if you talk to people who've worked with them closely, those people will tell you that they're about as popular as male pattern baldness. What's scary about both of them is that they think that they're competent. They're not. I would hire the guy who salts the fries at McDonald's before I would hire either one of them, but they think they're competent. They think they're smarter and more virtuous than the rest of us. And they acted on their political beliefs. Brennan, for example, Mr. Brennan was one of the ones who told the American people that the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real, that it was Russian disinformation. They're just not honest people. And if they broke the law, they should be held accountable. They're also just, they're like so many in Washington, Harris, they're so arrogant. Lyndon Johnson used to have an expression. He'd say, that guy's so arrogant, he could strut sitting down. Well, that's the way Mr. Comey and Mr. Brennan are. Those two have done more to destroy the American people's confidence in the FBI and national intelligence than any two people I can think of.
Well, I would like you to speak up for the guy who salts the fries at McDonald's. He is giving back to society in a way that we all can appreciate. What you described, those men definitely are not doing that and have not done that.
No, they really haven't. And I wouldn't say that about all of the people in President Biden's administration. But these two are, they're just especially bad. And they were so political. They're just political hacks who tried to pretend that they had the American people's best interests at heart. And they don't. And I love McDonald's French fries, by the way, and the people who salt them.
Amen. Senator, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you, Harris.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.